r/NoSleep. Posted by u/TroncdeNadal. My cousin has been missing for years. Her old diary reveals her horrifying fate. Part 1. The photograph depicted 6 people joyfully smiling at the camera and posing in front of a beautifully decorated Christmas tree. 4 of them were adults, my uncle, aunt, mother and father, and the other 2 are a 10-year-old girl and a 1-year-old baby, the young girl lovingly cradled in her arms. Ever since your mother got pregnant, Kylie wouldn't stop rambling about how impatient she was for you to be born. And when that finally happened, she then wanted you to grow up quickly so you could both play together. My aunt explained as I stared at the picture. I had no memories of Kylie, so seeing a picture of myself right alongside her as a baby was fascinating and emotional in a way I can't really put into words. It made me wonder what could have been had it not for the sudden tragedy that would befall upon my cousin and would devastate the whole family shortly after. Just a week after that cheerful Christmas day of 2005, Kylie would mysteriously go missing one dark and cold January night of 2006, never to be seen or heard from again. As for me, I had since grown into an 18-year-old college student. I had come to stay at my aunt's house for a while because it was conveniently located near the college I studied at. After having lunch and chatting with my aunt and uncle, they took me upstairs to show me the room I'd be sleeping in. I recognized that locked door at first sight, Kylie's room. It had remained locked ever since Kylie disappeared, and all my attempts to enter it when I was a kid had resulted in me getting scolded by my mother and aunt. "Are you sure you can take it? I can sleep on the couch downstairs, you don't have to do this," I asked my aunt and uncle, knowing what that room meant for them and knowing how they promised themselves to permanently keep that room shut ever since the day they lost Kylie. "We've given it a lot of thought, don't worry about us, Jane. Kylie loved you, it's what she would have wanted," they replied as they slowly opened the door to Kylie's room. My aunt and uncle had cleaned it up a bit the day before my arrival, but for the most part, it looked pretty much identical to how it did the day Kylie vanished. The pink flowery wallpaper that decorated the wall, the shelf filled with toys and children's books, the bed and even the bedsheets were also the same. It almost felt as if Kylie herself had just been there earlier that day, as if time had stopped flowing after she went missing. "This room is yours now. Make yourself at home and feel free to call us if you need anything," my aunt and uncle proclaimed before leaving me alone in the room. I spent the remainder of that evening reading a book I had to write an essay about for college. After a couple hours, I decided I had read enough for that day and opened a drawer next to the bed in order to store the book, only to find there already was a book inside that drawer, a very special kind of book. It was considerably smaller than my book from college. Its cover was pink with the title being written in big purple letters that spelled, "My Diary." It didn't take a genius to figure out what this book was and who it most likely used to belong to. I did not hesitate to pick it up and began reading the first page. I was tired of reading the book from college, but how could I say no to the diary of my long-lost cousin? December 25, 2005. Dear Diary. It's Christmas Day. I've received tons of presents this morning. I knew Santa Claus was proud of me. I've gotten the new Animal Crossing game for my DS, a pair of woolly earmuffs, and this diary. I wanted a doll like the one all the other girls in my class have. There's even a boy who has the doll too, but he told me to keep it a secret. Mommy says I have to be thankful for what I've gotten, and I guess she's right, so not having the doll doesn't bother me that much. Also, my aunt and uncle and baby Jane have visited us and we've all had lunch together. Baby Jane is the cutest. I promised my aunt I would take care of her just like Mommy took care of me when I was a baby. Reading that first entry made me shed a few tears. I couldn't help it. I could picture the innocent smile on her face as she wrote on her brand new diary that Christmas Day. And the way she talked about me as a baby was so heartwarming it almost made me feel enraged about the fact I knew I had spent time with her but was far too young to remember any of it. December 26, 2005. Dear Diary. What a day. Mommy and Daddy have taken me to a snowy mountain. There were other kids with their parents and we've played together in the snow. It was so much fun. We've made a snowman and I wanted to give him my earmuffs but Mommy said I needed them for myself so my ears can stay warm and cozy. I saw another girl with earmuffs and hers were much cuter. They were pink and were shaped like hearts. Mine are just round and red. Anyway, the best part of the day was when I found a doll lost in the snow. She looks like an angel. She's not like the doll my friends have, but she's cute, so I've taken her home. And guess what? I've named her Jane, like the baby. That entry made me notice something I had first seen when I entered the room, but I hadn't really paid attention to it until Kylie's diary brought it up. The plush doll that was sitting on Kylie's bed, which was now my bed, I guess, It looked like a traditional angel, with a pair of wings, white robes and a small halo on its head. I had no doubt about it, this doll had to be the same one mentioned in the diary, which Kylie had named after myself. Kylie wrote that she had found the doll lost on a snowy mountain in late 2005, but it looked to be much older than that. It would have felt right at home in an antique store filled with memorabilia from the Victorian era. Who knows where it had come from and what it had been through before being found by Kylie. I figured that continuing to read the diary would perhaps give me more information about that mysterious doll I shared my name with. December 27, 2005. Dear Diary. Jane cried last night. She was sleeping by my side and she started crying, like a real kid. This morning, I've told Mommy and Daddy but they believe I'm just playing pretend. But I'm not. I woke up and she wasn't in bed with me. Maybe she didn't want me to pick her up. I tried to cheer her up by bringing her to my friend Sarah's house. We played with our dolls and had a make-believe tea party. Sarah said Jane wasn't as cute as her doll. She said Jane was kinda creepy. I got upset because that made Jane feel sad so she might cry tonight as well. Thanks a lot, Sarah. That last entry left me utterly baffled. A plethora of conflicting thoughts flooded my mind as I stared at that doll on the bed. No, it simply couldn't be possible. It didn't make rational sense for Kylie's diary entry to be taken literally. Surely it was nothing more than a child with a wild imagination. But still, the sudden tone shift compared to the previous two entries was striking. I had originally planned to sleep with the Jane doll next to me out of respect for Kylie, but after reading her diary, I instead opted to leave it on the shelf with the other toys. It just gave me some bad vibes I didn't quite know how to explain, but I knew there was something about her that felt off. And the fact it was named Jane just like me didn't help either. I woke up in the middle of the night as an odd high-pitched sound broke the silence. I drowsily looked around the bedroom in pitch darkness in hopes of identifying where the sound had come from but saw nothing out of the ordinary. I wiggled in bed for a couple seconds trying to get in a comfortable position to get back to sleep. It was then when I felt something small and soft touching my arm, the Jane doll. There it was, laying next to me. I vaguely remembered having put her on the shelf before going to sleep. But it was late and I was pretty tired, so my sleepy brain assumed that I had just imagined leaving her on the shelf and had kept her in bed this whole time. A short while afterwards, I was woken up by sudden noises once again. It sounded like a child was crying. I stood up only to see what looked like a small shadowy figure in the darkness, standing right next to the bed. I also noticed the Jane doll was gone. It wasn't on the bed and it wasn't on the shelf either. I rubbed my eyes thinking this was just what they call a sleep paralysis demon, an imaginary shadowy creature our mind sometimes conjures when you wake up abruptly and your senses are alert but your mind is still half asleep and misinterprets reality. But those kinds of illusions are normally static and lifeless and only last a couple seconds. No, that shadowy child was something else. I was sure I could hear them weep. I tried to turn on the lights but they had inexplicably stopped working. The shadowy child lingered in the darkness, sobbing right next to the bed with their hands covering their face. I sat on my bed contemplating them in silence. My brain was still too sleepy and confused to move or react in any other way. Kylie? I faintly uttered the first thing that came to my mind as I slowly tried to process what was going on. Upon hearing my words, the child stopped weeping and put down their hands which had been covering her face. The baby, where is the baby? The child yelled in a voice that resembled that of a little girl as they lunged themselves towards me. I finally snapped out of my drowsy state as my survival instincts kicked in. I struggled as the child aggressively tried to grab my hair and I tried to hold her arms. The baby, the child kept uttering. I gathered all the strength I could muster and pushed her out of the bed, causing her to tumble to the floor as I screamed in panic. My aunt and uncle came running to my room as I hopped out of bed. Jane. What's the matter? They asked worryingly. The doll disappeared, and then there was a kid, and they attacked me, I shouted in tears as I was trying to make sense of what had just happened. My uncle turned on the lights, and it worked, unlike what had happened when I had tried it earlier. What doll? The one that's over there on the bed? It used to belong to Kylie. You must have had a nightmare. We understand better than anyone it must be emotionally intense for you to sleep in this room, but there's nothing to worry about. My aunt comforted me as I stared in disbelief at the doll, which had somehow reappeared on the bed. The shadowy kid had vanished without a trace. There were only 45 minutes left until 7 a.m., which was the time I usually woke up at, so I decided not to go back to bed and to have breakfast early. My uncle accompanied me to the kitchen with his characteristic limp as my aunt stayed behind. "Calm down, my dear, calm down," I heard my aunt murmur. I initially thought she was talking to me, until I noticed her eyes weren't directed towards me, but she instead was looking back at Kylie's room.